Good morning, everyone. Today, I will be discussing about portfolio writing and consolidation. This topic is important, especially for us as a future teachers, because a portfolio allows us to collect and present evidence of our learning, teaching experiences, and professional growth. So, throughout this discussion, we will learn what a portfolio is, what should be included in it, how to write it, and how to properly consolidate it. Before we begin, let us first look at our learning objectives. After this lesson, you should be able to do three things. First, for knowledge. You should be able to explain the purpose, importance, and components of portfolio writing and consolidation. Second, for skills. You should be able to organize and consolidate relevant teaching outputs and reflections. And lastly, for effective, you should appreciate portfolio writing as a way of documenting your learning and professional growth. So, our goal is not only to know what a portfolio is, but also to understand how we can use it as a future teachers. Before we discuss the definition of a portfolio, let me ask you a question. Imagine that after your practice teaching, you have many materials such as lesson plans, activity sheets, assessment tools, pictures, certificates, and reflection. Now, what if you simply put all of these materials inside one folder without arranging or explaining them? Will that already be an effective portfolio? Correct. It will be not enough because a good portfolio needs to be organized and meaningful. The materials should also a purpose and should show what we have learned from our experiences. So what is exactly a teaching portfolio? A teaching portfolio is an organized collection of selected teaching materials, evidence, experiences, and reflections. It demonstrates our learning competencies, accomplishments, and professional growth. In simpler words, a portfolio is more than just a folder of papers. For example, if I include a lesson plan in my portfolio, I should not just show the lesson plan. I should also explain what I learned from creating or using the lesson plan. That is what makes a portfolio meaningful. Before we start writing a portfolio, we need to prepare first. There are three important things we need to do. First, we determine the purpose of a portfolio. Second, we gather possible materials and evidence. And third, we select materials that are relevant and meaningful. This means that we should not immediately put everything into our portfolio. We first need to think about what materials are useful and connected to our purpose. Let us first talk about determining the purpose. Before making a portfolio, we should ask ourselves why I am creating this portfolio. A portfolio can have different purposes. It can be used to document our learning experiences, present our teaching experiences, demonstrate our competencies, showcase our accomplishments, provide evidence of learning, and reflect on our professional growth. Example, if I am preparing a portfolio as a future teacher, I can use it to show the teaching skills and experiences that I have developed. So knowing the purpose helps us decide what materials we should include. After determining the purpose, the next step is to gather relevant materials. This may include lesson plans, activity sheets, assessment tools, instructional materials, teaching photographs, certificates, feedbacks, written outputs, and reflection paper. However, remember that we should not include materials simply because we have them. We need to ask, is this material related to my learning teaching experiences? If the answer is yes, then it may be appropriate to include it. Let's have a quick activity called What Belongs in My Portfolio. For example, a lesson plan belongs in a portfolio because it shows our ability to prepare a lesson. A teaching reflection also belongs because it shows that we learn from our experiences. An assessment output can also be included because it provides evidence of our teaching or learning. A certificate of participation and teaching activity can also be relevant. Random, but a random unrelated paper or a personal shopping receipt does not belong because it has no connection to our teaching or professional development. So the portfolio material should be relevant and meaningful. This is where we begin the actual portfolio writing. A well-organized portfolio may contain several important parts. These are: first, the cover page; second, the table of contents; third, the introduction; fourth, the teaching outputs or evidence; fifth, the reflection; sixth, the documentation; and lastly, the conclusion. Let us begin with the three components. The first is the cover page. The cover page contains basic information such as our name, course, subjects, title of the portfolio, instructor, school, and academic year. Next is the table of contents. It lists the different sections of our portfolio under page numbers. This makes the portfolio easier to navigate. The third one is introduction. So the introduction explains the purpose of the portfolio, what it contains, and what we want to demonstrate through it. So these first three parts basically introduce the portfolio to the reader. Next is the teaching evidence. Teaching evidence is important because it provides proof of our learning and teaching experiences. Examples include lesson plans, activity sheets, assessment materials, instructional materials, teaching photographs, certificates, students' outputs, and feedback. For example, if I include a lesson plan, that lesson plan serves as evidence of my ability to plan and prepare a lesson. If I include a reflection after conducting an activity, that reflection can show what I learned from the experience. Therefore, evidence should not just be included for decoration. It should help demonstrate our learning the development. Now, we have one of the most important parts of a portfolio, which is reflection. Reflection means looking back at our experience and think about what we learned from it. When writing a reflection, we can ask ourselves several questions. What did I learn? What did I experience? What challenges did I encounter? How did I address those challenges? What did I do well? And what can I improve? And these questions help us understand our experience more deeply. For us as future teachers, reflection is important because it helps us recognize our strengths and areas that we still need to improve. Compare two examples of reflection. The first one says, I conducted a teaching activity with the students. This is weak reflection because it only tells us what happened. The improved reflection. Conducting the teaching activity helped me understand the importance of giving clear instructions and considering the different learning needs of students. This is better because it tells us what the student learned from the experience. So when we write reflection, we should not only say what happened. We should also explain what did I learn? What did I realize? How can I improve? That is what makes a reflection meaningful. Another part of the portfolio is documentation. Documentation provides supporting evidence of our experiences. Examples included photographs, certificates, feedbacks, observation forms, and activity outputs. However, the documentation should support the purpose of our portfolio. Lastly, we have the conclusion. The conclusion summarizes our major learning experiences and explain how the portfolio contributed to our development. In simple words, the conclusions answers what did I learn from all these experiences and how did I grow as a future teacher? At this stage, we talk about portfolio consolidation. Portfolio consolidation means bringing together relevant teaching materials, evidence, documentation, and reflection, and arranging them into one organized and meaningful portfolio. In simple terms, consolidation means putting everything together in an organized way. But remember, we do not just put everything together randomly. We need to arrange the materials properly. The portfolio consolidation process has 7 steps. First is collect. We gather our possible materials and evidence. Second is select. We choose the materials that are relevant and meaningful. Third is organize. We arrange the materials according to the appropriate sections. Fourth is write. We provide descriptions, explanations, and reflections. Fifth is reflect. We explain that we learn from our experiences. Sixth is compile. We put all the components together. And lastly, review. Review. We check if our portfolio is complete, clear, relevant, and grammatically correct and properly presented. I want everyone to remember this important point. A good portfolio is not necessarily the portfolio with the most documents. Having many papers does not automatically mean that the portfolio is good. More important is that the portfolio clearly demonstrates our learning, experiences, competencies, reflections, professional growth. So, it is better to have a few relevant and meaningful pieces of evidence than many unrelated documents. To summarize our entire discussion, let us remember 6 important things. Collect with purpose. This means we gather the materials that have a purpose. Select with care. We choose only relevant and meaningful evidence. Organize clearly. We arrange our portfolio in a logical order. Write meaningfully. We explain what our evidence represents. Reflect honestly. We think about what we learned from our experiences. Finally, review carefully. We check our portfolio before submitting it. Remember, your portfolio is a representation of your learning journey and professional development as a future teacher. That concludes my discussion about portfolio writing and consolidation. Before I end, I want you to remember that a portfolio is not just a folder filled with papers. It is a collection of a meaningful evidence that shows our learning experiences, competencies, reflections, and professional growth.